We open on a sweep of the ancient world in twilight, the late Bronze Age, about 1200 BCE. Empires stretch from mighty Egypt up through the Hittite kingdoms of Anatolia and across to Mycenaean Greece, each a glittering jewel of civilization. Merchants plough the Nile Delta fields and send casks of wine on Phoenician ships towards Cyprus, while scribes in Anatolia record census tallies and cedar shipments to Babylon. It is a time of building. Obelisks and ziggurats rise skyward in cities that seem secure, golden at midday and tranquil at sunset. Yet unseen currents tug at the foundations, like the sea pulling at a sandcastle's edges. In the bustling ports of Ugarit, the air hums with the creak of oiled hulls and the chatter of traders haggling over lapis lazuli from distant Afghanistan or ivory tusks carved in Syrian workshops. Women in flowing linen robes weave baskets from river reeds, their fingers deftly knotting patterns that echo the intricate frescoes adorning palace walls. Children dart through shadowed alleys, kicking leather balls stuffed with wool, while elders gather at wellheads to share tales of heroic kings who tamed floods and felled monsters. This interconnected realm pulses with life, a fragile symphony of bronze tools forging alliances and papyrus scrolls sealing pacts, all under the watchful gaze of storm gods whose thunder seems eternal. Then the horizon darkens with mystery, a fleet of ships, an unimaginable host gliding over the waves toward Egypt. These are the Sea Peoples, invaders without a known homeland, their true identity lost to time. Egyptian scribes describe them as monstrous raiders from the sea, peoples of the sea with feathered headgear and armor unlike any army they had seen. To Egypt's people, these ghostly warriors seem like new gods arriving in storm-racked skiffs, tongues and names forever strange. Reliefs carved into temple walls show them with horned helmets and long plumes, exotic silhouettes that puzzled even the finest artists of Ramses's court, their feathered crests fluttering like the wings of predatory birds against the stark desert backdrop. The invaders' ships, broad-beamed and swift, slice through the foam like bronze knives, carrying not just warriors but families, carts laden with meager possessions, a hint of desperation beneath the ferocity. Whispers spread through Nile villages. Were they demons spat from the underworld, or exiles cursed by forgotten deities? The uncertainty hangs heavy, as thick as the incense smoke rising from riverside altars where priests murmur frantic prayers to Horus for protection. The scene is cinematic. Medjay guards stand at dawn on Egypt's beaches, eyes wide as a horde of raiders marches from longships, spears gleaming in the golden sunrise. From Ramses III's mortuary temple of Medinet Habu, hieroglyphs carve their dramatic tale. We found them coming on the very midst of the sea. Their heart is from chaos. The pharaoh himself stands poised with bow and mace, an Egyptian Achilles, as a wave of bronze-studded shields surges forward. It is 175 BCE, year 8 of Rameses's reign, and he claims two titanic battles, the Battle of Jahi on the Asiatic shore and the Battle of the Delta at home. In his inscriptions he brags of victory and the sea swallowing the vanquished, but those chiseled smiles freeze the triumph. They reveal little of what came next. Imagine the chaos, the clash of chariot wheels churning sand into crimson mud, the guttural cries of invaders mingling with the wails of fallen soldiers, the acrid tang of smoke from burning reed huts drifting on the salt breeze. Rameses's archers loose volleys that darken the sky like locusts, while the Sea People's slingers hurl stones that whistle through the air, felling horses and men alike. Victory comes at a cost. Fields trampled, canals clogged with wreckage, a hollow echo of glory that lingers in the pharaoh's shadowed eyes. Egypt was not alone in this drama. To the north, the great Hittite Empire also feels a distant tremor. Hattusa, capital of kings, is filled with bustling processions and market stands, oblivious to the gathering storm that will soon burn its palace to ash. In the Aegean, Mycenaean Greeks likewise sense the shift. Their palaces glitter with bronze mirrors and imported ivory. But within years those halls will stand empty. For now, the Bronze Age still basks in confidence. Princes trade gifts, charioteers race on spiral terraces, scholars copy hymns on papyrus. In the shadow of Hattusa's massive gates, artisans hammer intricate gold diadems for royal brides, their forges glowing like captured stars, while scribes in cool archive rooms tally tribute from vassal states. Grain from Syrian fields, horses from Kisuwetna's pastures. Mycenaean feasts unfold in frescoed megarons, where warriors boast of boar hunts and lovers exchange amber beads from Baltic shores. the air rich with the scent of roasted lamb and spiced wine. This era's grandeur feels immutable, a world where diplomacy dances on the edge of the sword, and every horizon promises prosperity rather than peril. The storytellers of later ages barely mention these invaders, yet faint echoes drift into myth and scripture. Ancient verses recall the Caphtorim, islanders from Kafta, perhaps Crete, swarming down on Gaza's coast and overtaking its towns. Later traditions describe the Philistines as these Caphtorim descendants, suggesting these sea-born warriors settled in Canaan. In time they reappear as the Philistines of ancient lore, coastal city lords locked in epic struggles with emerging tribal heroes. By the era of King David, the Peliset, as the Egyptians called them, dominate Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ashdod. The giant Goliath and Samson's crumbling temple become enduring legends, dim echoes of those Bronze Age mariners. Traditions speak of Israel languishing under Philistine rule for 40 years, a period of subjugation that forged the iron of resilience in the face of coastal tyrants. Scripture never names sea peoples, but its pages still hold their legacy, as if the memory of armies from the sea could only survive in parables and song, woven into tales of deliverance and divine retribution that comfort the oppressed and warn the mighty. For now, though, the mystery stands. Who were these invaders? They left no throne lists or chronicles of their own, only scars on others. We must piece together their story like archaeologists brushing off dust in the desert. Each broken amphora, each ash-laden temple is a clue. Imagine a detective in the Louvre, here a fragment of an Egyptian stele, there a burnt tablet from Ugarit. Our investigation has just begun, and it starts with stones and shadows, with restless waves waiting beyond the shore. The quest feels almost sacred, a communion with the voiceless dead, as we sift through strata of soil that hold the weight of forgotten lives. A child's terracotta doll shattered in flight, a merchant's seal stamped with prayers for safe passage now cracked and silent. The investigation deepens. Ancient Egyptians etched the attackers' names into stone: the Peliset, Shurdan, Weshesh, Luka, Denyon, Shekelesh, a rogue's gallery of invaders. Each name hints at a clue. Luka sounds like Lycia, Shurdan like Sardinia, Peliset like Philistines. Archaeologists chase these leads in dusty temples and tombs, piecing together a case from pottery and bones, as if at a forensic crime scene. Even propaganda helps. One pharaoh, Merneptah, around 1210 BCE, boasted that the sea peoples came from their isles and none returned. We smile at the braggadocio. Propaganda seldom mentions its defeats, but it timestamps the crisis, anchoring the chaos to a specific pulse in time. These inscriptions, carved with chisels that bit deep into limestone, serve as both boast and blueprint, revealing not just the pharaoh's bravado but the invaders' tactics, amphibious assaults, feints with decoy ships, a mastery of the sea that turned the Mediterranean into a battlefield of wind and wave. We turn to archaeology as our detective lab. In the ruins of Ashkelon and Ashdod, Mycenaean-style pottery suddenly appears in the rubbish heaps, red and black painted bowls that don't belong in Canaan. It's as if warriors from the Aegean packed their own picnic sets for the invasion. Even DNA tests whisper. Some early Philistines carried European ancestry, their bones yielding isotopes of distant soils and seas. Bronze swords and boar-tooth helmets emerge that look purely Greek or Anatolian, not local. Piece by piece, clues from pottery shards to skeleton isotopes point to a colossal cultural collision at sea. Dozens of sites now show burnt layers dated to around 1200 BCE, an almost simultaneous apocalypse from the Aegean through the Levant. At Tel Kassil, near modern Tel Aviv, excavators uncover a Philistine temple with altars stained by ritual blood, its hearth filled with Aegean-style hearths and feasting debris. Evidence of newcomers blending old rites with new lands. In the depths of Cypriot shipwrecks off the coast of Ulu Burun, bronze ingots stamped with Hittite marks mingle with Canaanite amphorae, a frozen snapshot of trade turned to tragedy, where merchant vessels became ad hoc warships in the face of encroaching hordes. Nature itself joins the suspect list. Pollen data and tree rings hint at severe drought sweeping the eastern Mediterranean, crops failed and rivers shrank. It's almost cosmic, a sudden climate shift squeezing people on a global hunger pulse. Starvation and chaos could have turned farmers into refugees or pirates, driving desperate populations toward the coasts. In this dark age scenario, the weather itself is an accomplice to upheaval, a silent force that withered olive groves in Anatolia and choked the Jordan with dust, forcing herders to abandon ancestral pastures for the uncertain promise of plunder. Lake cores from the Golan Heights reveal barren sediment layers, devoid of the pollens that once marked bountiful harvests, while Anatolian bristlecone pines bear narrow rings like skeletal fingers, testifying to years of unrelenting thirst. This environmental betrayal, layered atop political intrigue, transformed stable societies into tinderboxes, where a single failed monsoon could ignite migrations that reshaped the map. Scholars now suspect the Sea Peoples were not a single nation, but a confederation of displaced fighters. Picture a flotilla of Aegean Greeks, Anatolian sailors, Sicilian islanders, and Levantine rebels, a kind of ancient refugee crisis unleashed across the waves. Each group had its own motive: famine, civil war, the lure of plunder, but fate threw them into the same venture. They even sailed from Crete to Cilicia, a feat in the era before compasses, navigating by stars and coastal landmarks under sails dyed with murex purple. When we plot these movements on a map, the arrows line up, from the Aegean to the Levant. Everywhere the coasts see armies coming from the sea. This mosaic of migrants, tattooed warriors from the Isles, scarred veterans of Hittite border skirmishes, formed a loose alliance bound by shared desperation, their longships a floating ark of the dispossessed, carrying not just weapons but the seeds of new cultures that would take root in the ashes of the old. Of course, wild theories swirled as well. Legend hunters in modern times have fancied Trojan survivors or even Atlantis, but serious detectives stick to shards and scrolls, not sea serpent tales. The truth seems simpler, if no less dramatic: mere human warriors on wooden ships, taking advantage of an unraveling world. The academic consensus coalesces around this idea. The Sea Peoples were multi-ethnic raiders, mercenaries and migrants rowing through chaos, their oars dipping in rhythm with the dirges of a dying age. Yet even in this grounded view, poetry lingers. These were not faceless hordes, but individuals. A helmsman scanning horizons for safe harbor, a mother clutching a swaddled child amid the spray, their stories swallowed by the very waves that bore them forward. Armed with these insights, we zoom out. The late Bronze Age suddenly erupts in collapse, almost like a mini Big Bang of history. Trade routes disintegrate, kingdoms crumble, palaces topple, cities burn, and tiny flotillas ride the shockwave. In fact, dozens of archaeological sites across Anatolia, the Levant and Greece show destruction layers dated to this exact era. Scholars today call it the Late Bronze Age collapse, and the Sea Peoples appear to have been its spark. Now, with our suspects identified and motives in view, the stage is set for the final act. In the chapters to come, we will watch these invaders crash into history and help wipe out the old Bronze Age order. Their legacy, a bridge from bronze's gleam to iron's unyielding edge. Act 3 begins amid the tinder of destruction. All across the eastern Mediterranean, great powers buckle. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire, which once ruled from its majestic capital Hattusa, falls like dry wood catching flame. Temples and archives burn, clay tablets crack under the heat. The last Hittite king, Suppiluliuma II, vanishes from history as if erased. After about 1180 BCE, Hattusa is eerily silent. In the chaos, Hittite nobles become refugees, fleeing to Carchemish, Aleppo, or even the Nile Delta, their once proud chariots abandoned in mountain passes, wheels splintered, and harnesses tangled in thorny scrub. The city's vast acropolis, once echoing with the chants of storm god festivals, now shelters only scavenging jackals, its monumental gates ajar like forgotten invitations. In Greece, the world of Agamemnon is swallowed too. Mycenaean citadels, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, Thebes, all lie in smouldering ruin, their palace walls scorched by flame. Frescoes peel from walls, linear B tablets, the scribbled accounts of kings and priests, vanish into oblivion. Archaeologists imagine priests dropping gold chalices as smoke billows through the Megaron. A warrior's tomb stands open, spears unclaimed and slowly rusting. Greece soon enters its dark age. No writing, shattered society, the bronze world gone. The Tholos tombs at Mycenae, beehive wonders of corbelled stone, gape empty, their dromoi choked with fallen masonry, while the citadel at Gla, a vast Mycenaean fortress, reveals hasty barricades of rubble, as if defenders piled stones in vain against an unseeing tide. Oral epics, passed down through generations of bards around flickering hearth fires, preserve faint memories. Heroes clashing in halls now haunted by wind, their feasts interrupted by the crackle of invading torches. The Levantine coast suffers its share as well. Ugarit, a wealthy Syrian port allied with the Hittites, answers its final letter around 1180 BCE, pleading with Egypt for help as ash darkens the sky. That city's palace and temple are overrun, never to be rebuilt. Its cuneiform archive lies silent under the rubble. Sidon and Tyre survive but are changed. Tyre's trade shifts towards cedar timber and purple dye to survive the turmoil. In Canaan, once rich city-states collapse. Gaza, Ashkelon and Ashdod come under Philistine rule, and the hills see tribal peoples, early Israelites among them, laying down roots. By the Judges period, tribal chieftains lead, because no royal house endures, a time when every man did as he saw fit amid the void of centralized power. At Hazor in the north, a massive gate complex lies in charred heaps, its basalt threshold scarred by siege rams, while at Lachish, arrowheads litter the streets like discarded seeds, testament to a desperate last stand. Even Egypt's supremacy trembles. Ramses III's massive walls hold the first great assaults, but only just. Generals return bearing war booty, but pharaohs carry nightmares. Within a generation of Ramses III's death, chaos grips the Nile. High priests at Karnak record omens of drought and rebellion. The pharaoh's cult falters. Imagine a priest pleading to Ra, "The seas have roared against us, and now the land itself heaves under fear." The 20th dynasty collapses. Lesser pharaohs carve smaller tombs. By the late Bronze Age's end, Egypt too is a shell of its former self, awaiting a new age. The Deir el-Medina village, home to tomb builders, erupts in strikes over unpaid grain rations, their graffiti scrawled in red ochre on hut walls, raw cries of hunger that pierce the pharaoh's divine facade. The Nile's sacred bark processions grow sparse, their oarsmen weakened by famine, as the once mighty river becomes a ribbon of mud fringed by skeletal palms. Elsewhere, kingdoms once thought invincible shudder. In Babylon, the ancient Kassite line implodes by 1155 BCE under pressure from Elamites and Arameans, and Babylon is sacked. Assyria too is shaken. One Assyrian king even boasts of battling people of the sea and setting enemy ships aflame. Perhaps he too faced similar raiders. But Assyria's heartland holds, and it will eventually rise again. In Syria and Canaan, new peoples fill the gap. Aramean tribes spread into old Hittite territories, and Israelite confederations settle the hill country. The old tribal names fade, replaced by new kingdoms and city-states. At Emar on the Euphrates, a ritual pit yields the bones of sacrificed animals mingled with human remains, a frantic offering to avert the end, now buried under flood silt. These shifts birth hybrid cultures. Philistine pottery blends Aegean motifs with Levantine forms, a visual diary of fusion born from fire. By about 1100 BCE, the tapestry of the Bronze Age is shredded. Archaeologists tally dozens of major cities with blackened destruction layers right around 1200 BCE. Trade routes from Crete to Mesopotamia lie silent, ships no longer sail from port to port, and caravans through the desert dwindle. Bronze smithies grow cold, their tin and copper supplies have vanished, and iron, once rare, becomes king of the battlefield and farm. In effect, the late Bronze Age ends, and the Iron Age begins. The transition feels visceral. Forges that once rang with the hammer song of prosperity now echo with the crude clangs of survival, as communities smelt local bog iron into tools that democratize power, freeing peasants from palace monopolies. This technological pivot, born of scarcity, sows the seeds of a more resilient, if humbler, world. No one in 1200 BCE wrote, "Game over for this civilization." Our story comes through archaeologists who dig centuries later. In sites like Bogazkoy, Hattusa, or Tiryns, broken tablets and charred fragments whisper of sacked palaces. Each shard is a clue, a direct voice from the past. It's as if the memory of this era were buried under sand and waves, only to be pieced back together bit by bit. We read these stories from loss and ruin, like skeptics reading prophecy, hoping to find meaning in the ashes. Modern digs, lit by floodlights and moonless nights, uncover not just artifacts but atmospheres, the faint char of olive wood from a final hearth, the iridescent sheen of melted glass from a collapsed workshop. These fragments humanize the epic. A scribe's stylus snapped mid-word, a loom weight tangled in wool threads, remind us that empires fall not in abstraction but in the interruption of ordinary lives. Ancient texts never mention sea peoples by name, yet their echoes linger. Hebrew prophets frequently describe armies undone by the sea. One lament for Tyre paints a vivid naval siege, proud merchants cast down into the deep, their riches swirling in the foam. Another oracle speaks of ships bringing the island city low, its sails torn like the veils of fallen queens. Traditions recall Pharaoh's forces drowned in pursuit of the oppressed. These texts aren't eyewitness reports of 1200 BCE, but they share an image of proud nations shattered by waves. It's as though the cultures remember that a great flood of warriors once washed across their histories, a collective subconscious etching the trauma into verse and vision. This mythic residue invites us to wonder, did these tales evolve from campfire recollections of the collapse? Survivors huddling on hilltops as coasts burn below? When the dust settles, a new world takes shape. The Philistines of later biblical chapters are descended from these sea peoples, now ruling Gaza and Ashkelon as coastal city kings. Traditions record Israel under Philistine domination, their iron chariots rumbling over dusty roads, while tribes forge secret forges in hidden caves. Egypt eventually reincorporates Sheridan and Libyans into its army and art, once foes, now household names etched in tomb reliefs as loyal spearmen. Neo-Hittite kingdoms arise in Syria from the old ruins, their carved lions roaring defiance from weathered basalt. Tyrian and Sidonian merchants build a new seaborne culture, their purple-dyed sails unfurling toward untapped horizons. Israel and Judah emerge as small monarchies in Canaan. All this was sparked by the ash and salt of that great collapse. By the time classical civilization dawns, the players have changed, but the stage is set by 1200's finale. A phoenix world rising from the pyre, where iron plows till famine-scarred soil and alphabets bloom from the need to record rebirth. As the credits roll, our narrator might say, the Bronze Age's final act was one of smoke and silence. Through fire and fury, the Sea Peoples helped write the end of an era. In the end, all that remained was the question, who were they, really? The final shot fades on a tranquil sea at dawn, as if the waves themselves hold the answer just beyond sight. Yet in that quiet expanse we glimpse eternity's lesson. Civilizations are but ripples on the water, brilliant yet fleeting, their crests crashing to foam only to birth new swells. The Sea Peoples, enigmatic architects of endings, remind us that from unraveling comes reinvention, a truth as timeless as the tide.